The secret shipyard, under the frozen silence of Antarctica, where no satellite dared to look and no alien probe ever reached. Something massive was coming alive, a structure buried under ice, older than any war above it and bigger than any secret Earth ever held. It breathed with machines and fire and metal. It was Earth's first Star Destroyer, hidden from the eyes of every empire across the galaxy, built in silence, prepared in shadows, and now it was ready to rise. Jace stood near the control deck, staring at the massive ship through a glass wall that shook from the roar of engines deep underground. The ship was not just a weapon, it was a message. It was Earth saying, we are here, and we are not weak anymore. The crew around Jace worked fast. No one spoke much. They all knew what this meant. Earth had stayed silent for decades after first contact, while aliens mocked humans as primitives. Earth had watched, listened, and learned, and while the galaxy fought among itself, Earth built this in silence. The Star Destroyer, named Valkyrie 1, was black with strange curves and jagged armor. It was taller than a mountain and powered by a reactor so new even Jace barely understood how it worked. Designed by human minds fused with stolen alien tech, it was the first of its kind, and maybe the last. If this mission Phalanges was not born into war, he grew up watching others fight from above. Earth always kept quiet, but that silence ended when a rogue alien scout entered orbit and demanded Earth surrender. Earth gave no reply. Instead, the UN gave permission to launch Valkyrie 1, and now Jace was the pilot in charge of leading Earth's message straight into the stars. Wore a tight black suit with glowing lines across his arms connected directly to the ship's neural interface. Valkyrie 1 could be flown with thought and instinct, not just buttons and switches. The ship would respond to the mind of the pilot, and in return, the pilot would feel what the ship felt: pain, pressure, motion, cold, fear. It was not a cockpit, it was a bond. Commander Alira stood beside him, tall, strong, her voice sharp like ice. She said, the time has come. Jace, Earth is counting on you. We only get one shot. The galaxy is watching. They expect silence, but we will answer with thunder. Jace nodded. He was only 25, but trained harder than any pilot before him, chosen not just for skill, but for how he handled pressure. His mind was tested, broken, rebuilt, tested again. He had no family, no distractions, only duty, and now that duty was in front of him, shaped like a star killer waiting under ice. The countdown started across the speakers. Every technician moved into position. Red lights flashed, warning of launch. Power surged through the metal bones of Valkyrie 1. Jace stepped into the control chamber, which was more like a living heart than a cockpit. Wires wrapped around his arms and legs. Sensors touched his back and chest. The ship breathed with him. His eyes turned white as the link activated, and now he was not just Jace, he was the Valkyrie. With a single thought, he opened the hangar above. The ground cracked. Ice split, mountains trembled, and a massive platform rose from the glacier's snow. Flew into the sky. Birds screamed as the old world was broken open, and the new world rose from its tomb. The Star Destroyer crawled into the sunlight, bouncing off its black metal skin. It looked like a beast from legend, and it sounded like thunder from the heart of Earth itself. Aliens in distant space stations turned their heads as sensors screamed warning. Unknown ship detected. Human origin, impossible size, unmatched tech, inbound threat assessment, extreme unknown power signature. Entire galaxy paused to look, and no one knew what would come next. Jace gave no warning. He said no words. He just activated the engines, and the stars bent around him. Valkyrie 1 vanished from Earth's orbit, not with fire, but with light, quiet and deadly and unstoppable. And somewhere deep in alien space, near a dying star, a fleet was approaching Earth's solar border. Not knowing that something had already left to meet them, Jace sat in the heart of the Star Destroyer, his hands calm, his breath steady, and his voice whispered, not to his crew, but to the ship itself. They think we are weak. They think we will bow. Today, they will learn what Earth has become. Contact with the enemy. The stars shifted around Valkyrie 1 as it exited hyperspace. Silent, smooth, deadly. It did not scream into existence like other ships. It glided out of the fold like a shadow cutting through space. Jace opened his eyes, the connection with the ship still alive in his veins. The enemy fleet floated before him, unaware of what had just entered there. territory. Their scanners blinked confused. Their crew scrambled to understand what this black ghost was that stood in front of them. Alone and fearless, the alien empire known as the Zilari had ruled this sector for 300 years. They had crushed 9 planets, burned moons, enslaved thousands, and Earth was next in their path. Or so they believed. Their fleet was massive, long silver ships, shaped like knives and serpents, dozens of cruisers, a handful of destroyers, and a single capital ship that carried the voice of their overlord. They had seen Earth's satellites. They had seen our silence, and they mistook it for Furno. Valkyrie 1 faced them, not running, not answering, just existing where it should not be, the bridge of the Zilari capital. Ship lit with alarms, Overlord Nexon rose from his command seat, his blue skin wrinkled in fury. His voice cold. Send a message to that ship. Demand they surrender and prepare to be boarded. They are trespassing, and they will learn what it means to defy the Zilari. A signal burst across space aimed directly at Valkyrie. When a clear threat: surrender and be absorbed or be destroyed. Jess stood in the command chamber inside Valkyrie 1, his feet barely touching the floor, his body linked to the ship, his mind already calculating every possible outcome. His crew waited, silent, alert, loyal. They had trained with him for months, but none had truly believed they would face war so soon. Lieutenant Kara spoke from the side, her voice low. We just received their message. They want us to surrender. What do we say? Jace did not move. He let the silence speak, then said nothing. He raised his arm and pointed forward. Target the nearest cruiser, lock weapons, but do not fire until I say, he said softly. And every gun turret on Valkyrie 1 turned at once, glowing red and white with energy. The enemy watched, confused, unsure. This was not how humans acted. This was not fear. This was something else, something new. On the alien bridge, Overlord Nexon narrowed his eyes. Why are they not answering? Fire a warning shot. Destroy one of their wings and watch them run. He growled. A beam of green fire sliced through space toward Valkyrie 1. It struck the outer hull and bounced off like dust hitting steel. No burn, no damage, no response, only silence inside Valkyrie 1. Jace felt the impact like a shiver, but not pain. He turned toward his weapons officer and nodded once. Ship obeyed like a living beast. The forward cannons rotated, charged, and released a pulse so bright it blinded every sensor across the enemy fleet. The beam struck the Zilari CRUICR midsection in one breath, and when the light faded, the cruiser was gone, vaporized. Not even debris remained. The fleet panicked. Some tried to back away, others powered weapons, but none moved fast enough. Valkyrie 1 was already locking onto the next target. The Zilari flagship screamed orders: launch drones, fire all weapons, crush them now. But it was too late. Valkyrie 1 moved like a dancer through space, rotating sideways, releasing mines, missiles, plasma streaks, and more than anything, fear. The kind of fear that crawls inside your skin and whispers, this is not a war, this is a warning. In 10 minutes, 4 Zilari ships were floating wrecks. 2 more were fleeing into hyperspace, and the rest hovered frozen, waiting for orders that no longer came, because Overlord Nexon was gone, destroyed in the blast from Valkyrie 1's second barrage. The remaining alien commanders sent a signal, white flag encoded into a universal distress frequency. They offered surrender, they asked for mercy, and for the first time in 300 years, the Zilari Empire, bent in knee to someone they had never respected, just stood still inside the ship, his crew wide-eyed, hearts racing. None of them spoke. They just watched as alien ships powered down and drifted silently like leaves in wind. He said only this: send one message back to Earth. Tell them mission complete, enemy defeated, awaiting further orders. In his heart he knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy would not stay quiet, not after what they just saw. Earth had spoken with fire, and now the stars would answer fire over the dead moon. The wreckage floated like ghosts around the shattered Zilari ship's metal-twisted bodies, lost in vacuum, glowing fragments, spinning slowly in silence. But Valkyrie 1 stood untouched among them, as if carved from the darkness itself. Its armor burned from the battle, yet no system was down, no weapon disabled. It was not a ship, it was judgment. Just Watch the battlefield from the command chamber, not through screens, but through the MindLink. He felt every piece of space around him. He could hear the silent cries of retreating ships and sense the fear pumping through their fleeing engines. This was not victory, it was demonstration, and the galaxy had noticed a transmission burst through space, encrypted, wild, carrying panic from one alien outpost to another. The message was short to humans. Have something, the Zalari are broken. Beware. The Valkyrie just disconnected briefly from the neural core, letting his body rest, sweat dripping from his brow. Kara handed him a cloth, her hand shaking not from fear, but from awe. She whispered, they surrendered to one ship. How is this even real? Jay stared ahead, his voice calm. They surrendered to a future they never thought possible. They surrendered to silence followed by fire, and now we show them what comes next. The next target was not chosen by Earth Command, it was chosen by Jace himself, a dead moon long abandoned by the Zalari, now used as a mining hub by mercenary fleets known for raiding smaller planets. It had no cities, no families, just weapons, fuel, and merciless ambition. The perfect example. Valkyrie 1 entered orbit of the dead moon without sound, cloaked not by invisibility, but by precision, every motion calculated, every thruster silent. The surface was littered with hangars, laser turrets, towers, designed to shoot anything before it landed, but none of them fired. They were scanning for ships, not shadows. Jace leaned into the MindLink, his thoughts focused, his blood-cold weapons ready. He whispered into the ship, awaken. Within seconds, the ship's weapons activated auto-targeting systems, painting dozens of enemy sights, and glowing light missiles, locked plasma cannons, warmed gravity lances hummed in sync with Jace's heartbeat. And when he gave the order, it all happened at once. Fire danced across the moon, slicing towers, exploding fuel depots, melting hangars into slag. The sky turned red, then black, then black again. As smoke covered the stars, mercenaries tried to flee, but Valkyrie 1 tracked each one, destroying engines before they could escape. The ship did not kill, all it left some alive deliberately, to tell what they saw and what they felt when Earth arrived. One mercenary ship barely made it to hyperspace. Its hull cracked, its engines flickering, but its message reached a neutral relay station on the edge of Zalari space. It screamed into the void. A black ship from Earth destroyed everything in seconds. They knew our plans. They hit before we could speak. No warnings, no mistakes. They call it Valkyrie 1, and it is not a ship, it is death. Message went viral across galactic channels, picked up by smugglers, traders, and spies. Some laughed, calling it human propaganda. Others watched the battle footage leaked by a frightened mercenary and said nothing. Their silence spoke louder than fear. Back on the Valkyrie, the crew moved in rhythm with the ship now fully bonded. Every officer, every pilot, every technician had seen what it could do, and now they trusted it like they trusted Jace, even if they barely understood either one. Kara stood at his side again, her eyes locked on the moon below. She said, we did not just destroy weapons, we erased their pride. Jace nodded slowly, but the mission is not done. This was a message to those who profit from chaos. Next we speak to those who lead the chaos itself. The Council will not ignore this. They will prepare, and so will we on Earth. The footage from Valkyrie 1 reached hidden bunkers and deep command rooms. Generals watched in stunned silence as a single human ship brought an empire to its knees. Reporters scrambled to understand, politicians begged for briefings, and the people finally saw what had been built in secret, not just a ship, but a voice. And that voice was GC. Sent no speeches, made no statements. He only sent coordinates of the next jump, a place known to all and feared by many. The edge of Council space where diplomacy ends and strategy begins. Jay stood tall in the command core as the countdown began again. Hyperspace engines, charged lights dimmed around him, and his crew braced for what came next. He looked at them once, nodded slowly, and said one word: forward. And with that, Valkyrie 1 vanished into the fold again, leaving behind only smoke, wreckage, and the memory of fire over the dead moon. The betrayal within Valkyrie 1 tore through hyperspace like a blade through silk, silent, fast, leaving behind sparks of broken space trails, unseen by the naked eye but felt by those who watched. The stars closely Jace stood motionless in the command chamber, linked with the ship again, his heart steady, his mind clear. But something in the silence felt heavier. This time not fear, not fatigue, but something colder like ice crawling up the back of his neck. The destination was council space, the edge of diplomacy. The gates of the ruling alliance of 12 alien races, a place where wars were stopped with votes or started with fake promises. It was never meant for humans. Earth was never invited to the table, and now Earth was coming without knocking. Crew worked in silence, each of them aware that this mission was different. It was not an attack, not a raid. This was confrontation, and behind every confrontation was danger, not from the enemy but from those closest within, deep in the lower levels of Valkyrie 1. A shadow moved silently past locked doors and sensor panels. Dressed in black armor, with a stolen security chip in hand, the figure entered a restricted chamber where core data from Earth's hidden alliance was stored. One hand placed a small transmitter into the wall, pulsing faint red, and the other hand sent a signal across space to a location unknown, even to the ship. The traitor had a name, General Rexus, once a leader of Earth's highest council, now reduced to a hidden hand moving pieces from afar. He believed Earth should not challenge the galaxy, but sell what it created, share technology for favors, offer weapons for treaties. He had supported Valkyrie 1's launch only to expose its power and use it to trade influence. Now that the ship had proven itself, he was ready to sell Earth's soul for a seat at the alien table. Jace did not know the full plan yet, but the ship did. Valkyrie 1 had learned. Through its scans, through its silent watchers, it felt the wrong signals in its veins, a foreign pulse in its neural grid. It whispered to Jace, something is wrong. Something inside is not ours. Jace disconnected from the interface and called a private command meeting. His officers entered with curious faces, but left with frozen ones when he told them a traitor was on board. Someone had betrayed Earth's secrets, and now the council already knew we were coming. The team split into squads, searching corridors, unlocking panels, tracing energy lines. Kara moved fast with 3 security officers down into engineering. Where the signal had come from, they found the transmitter still warm, still blinking. The walls around it burned with evidence of override code, and behind a security crate, they found the tech officer assigned to that deck, tied and unconscious. Arrived minutes later. His eyes like steel, he scanned the scene, placed one hand on the transmitter, and whispered, "Show me the source." Valkyrie 1 responded in seconds, revealing the origin of the signal and the identity of the traitor. And Jace did not blink when the name Rexus appeared. He returned to the bridge and gave one order: seal the doors, isolate the signal, and bring Rexus to me alive if possible. Security captured the former general near the airlock, trying to access an escape pod. He fought back with hidden weapons, but was stunned and dragged to the chamber, now turned into a holding cell made of energy walls and neural locks. Jace entered alone, the others stayed outside. Rexus sat calmly, as if waiting for a reward, his voice smooth, cold. "You did well." Jace, "Very well, but you are still a soldier. I am a thinker, and thinkers rule the stars." Jace stared at him without speaking. Rexus continued, "You think Earth can stand alone against the Council, against empires older than your ancestors?" "No, Jace, we must join them, trade power for protection, share the Valkyrie, and in return Earth survives." Jess replied slowly, "Earth did not build Valkyrie 1 to beg for safety. We built it to choose our own future, not to sell it to those who laughed at you." As Rexus leaned forward and whispered, "Then you are a fool, and Earth will burn for your pride." Jace pressed a panel, and the energy walls shimmered brighter. He gave the order, lock him in deep cell-cut communication with Earth until further notice. The ship follows no voice except command and mission. Valkyrie 1 returned to full alert, systems ready, weapons charged, heading toward council space with the traitor behind and only unknown ahead. The crew now trusted Jace not just as a pilot, but as a leader, not just with their lives, but with Earth's soul. In the silence of deep space, Kara looked at him and asked, "What now?" Jace answered, "We speak to the council with fire. If they listen, they live. If they lie, they learn." And so Valkyrie One prepared to knock on the doors of the galaxy, not with hands but with thunder. Galactic Council reacts, the stars opened like a curtain. As Valkyrie 1 dropped out of hyperspace right at the edge of Council territory, the void stretched wide around them, but the silence was short-lived in seconds. Sensors picked up a massive formation, ahead rows of ships layered in formation like a metal wall, each one painted with the seal of the Galactic Council. Armed, ready, waiting, Jace stood at the center of the command chamber, his hands behind his back, his body linked with the ship again, the neural threads glowing faint across his skin. The crew stood steady around him, each of them aware. This was not just a battle zone. This was the judgment seat of the galaxy. A voice broke through the channel, cold, sharp, translated into Earth's tongue. This is the united voice of the Galactic Council, Valkyrie 1. You are trespassing in sovereign space. Reverse course now, and surrender all stolen technology or face consequences beyond your imagination. Jace did not answer immediately. He turned to Ward Kara, whose hands hovered over tactical controls, and she asked one word. Engage. Jace shook his head and said, not yet, not until they show their truth. Valkyrie 1 held position, unmoved, unbothered, its black hull reflecting the starlight as if mocking the ships in front of it. The Council had come not to negotiate, but to contain what they feared. And what they feared was not Earth, it was independence, it was defiance, it was something they could not predict and could not control. Another message came, this time from one of the outer ring. Council members, a softer voice, pretending peace. We do not wish for war, we wish for cooperation. The weapon you built can be shared, its technology can uplift many. Your aggression does not help your kin. Jace smiled slightly and pressed the broadcast key. This is Commander Jace of Valkyrie 1. Earth has heard your promises before. You offered us silence when we asked for recognition. You gave us threats when we reached for peace, and now you offer peace only because you see what we built. I do not come to trade, I come to speak, and if you do not listen, I will speak louder. The line went dead. The Council ships shifted slightly, weapons adjusted, shields raised, and energy began to flow through the veins of War 1. Final message arrived, encrypted, meant only for Jace, sent from a hidden source inside the Council. A warning: they plan to trap you in orbit. Disable your ship and force a surrender. Already leaked your location to hostile empires. Run now, or be erased. Jace read it once and deleted it without blinking. He said to his crew, prepare the forward cannons, load gravity anchors, and set a defensive pulse grid. If they make a move, we burn their gates down. The Council fleet began to close in, claiming formation tests, claiming safety maneuvers, but Valkyrie 1 saw the hidden codes, weapons charging under the cover of peace signals. Jace said nothing. He simply raised his hand and made a fist. Valkyrie 1 responded with fury, its forward cannons opened wide, releasing a burst of silent plasma that spread in all directions, not to destroy but to blind every sensor in the Council fleet. Light washed across their ships, disabling targeting, scrambling coordination, turning the Great Wall into scattered chaos. In that moment, Jace launched a single warhead, not at a ship, but at the transmission tower of the Central Command. A clean strike, no deaths, just silence and confusion, and a message: we see everything, we know your games, and we are not afraid. Some Council ships tried to fire back, but Valkyrie 1 danced between their attacks, warping short distances, evading with movements they could not predict, returning fire only when needed, destroying weapons, not lives, disabling engines, not hearts. One Council captain screamed into the comms, this is madness, this is impossible, how does one ship do this? The answer was not in the guns or the speed. It was in the mind of the one who flew it, and the soul of the world that built it. Earth had sent a ship, but also sent a message. We do not want your thrones. We do not want your chains. We only want our name and our right to rise. After 20 minutes. The battle paused, not because Valkyrie 1 ran out of fire, but because the Council ran out of will. Another message came, this one quieter. This is the voice of the 12. We request a ceasefire. We agree to speak terms under human leadership. Just stood in silence and finally said, this ship will hold orbit for 1 day. If you lie again, we return not with words, but with storms. Crew stared ahead, the battlefield now calm, the Council fleet now shattered in pride, but still afloat. Valkyrie One stood alone but victorious. Kara whispered, "They tried to control us, now they asked to follow." Jace looked at her and said, "Earth has waited long enough, now we lead to be continued in Part 6, the final stand," you said. No, right, Part 6, and Part 6 will be minimum 800 words more unique without dots. Do not write in small lines. ChatGPT said, Part 6, the final stand. Council agreed to meet, but not in peace halls or embassies. They feared what Valkyrie 1 had shown, so they requested a neutral moon orbiting a gas giant, a place far from cameras and crowded eyes. But Jace knew better. He knew the Council would never kneel without trying one last strike. The agreement was not trust, it was a trap. Valkyrie 1 moved into orbit above the meeting point, its systems scanning every inch of nearby space. The crew knew something was coming. They felt it in their bones, in the rhythm of the engines, in the hum of the weapons that refused to rest inside the command chamber. Jace stood surrounded by holograms of incoming data. Cloaked ships detected movement beneath the moon surface, confirmed energy spikes in the crater valley. Council fleet hidden behind the gas giant, charging plasma cores, silently aiming at Valkyrie 1 with every weapon they had left. Kara stepped beside him, her voice low. "They lied again." Jace nodded slowly, and his voice echoed through the ship. "Prepare for final engagement. Lockdown, override mode authorization." Jace Alpha Echo 7. Valkyrie 1 responded like a beast. Unleashed its outer armor, shifted into battle plates, shielding expanded missile pods. Emerged gravity fields surged and cloaking sensors activated across the hull. This was not defense, this was war. First shot came from below, a surface cannon hidden in the valley rose and fired a bolt of antimatter toward Valkyrie 1. The shot never landed. The ship bent space around it, twisting the path and redirecting it into the sky. Then the Council fleet came out from behind the giant, hundreds of ships forming a spiral around the moon, firing from all angles, trying to overwhelm the single ship that had broken their order. Valkyrie 1 was ready. Jace stood still, eyes glowing, his body fully merged with the neural grid. He no longer flew the ship, he was the ship. With a thought, Valkyrie 1 released a wave of magnetized mines into the spiral ships, collided weapons, misfired shields failed. The Council attack formation collapsed into chaos. Jace moved them forward, straight into the heart of the enemy, dodging beams, slicing through armor, launching focus strikes that tore through flagships like they were made of smoke. Kara monitored systems calling damage reports, but each one was matched by repair drones working faster than anything seen in battle before. Valkyrie 1 was bleeding, but not slowing down more. Council ships arrived, joining the trap too late to understand that they were now the ones being hunted. Jace saw the capital cruiser of the Council, the same ship that had given the surrender order days ago, now firing without shame. He targeted its engines, released a kinetic spear that passed through 3 layers of shielding and hit deep. The cruiser exploded, not in fire, but in silence, lights vanishing one by one until it was gone. Then came the broadcast from one of the few remaining Council commanders. "This is not a war, this is extinction. We did not know what Earth had become. Please stop, we will speak. We will surrender for real." Jace said nothing. The crew waited, not sure if he would finish the fight or let them live. But then Jace turned to Kara and said, "Aim only at their weapons, take out their power cores, let them float helpless, let them remember who we are." Valkyrie 1 obeyed, disarming ship after ship, not killing, not destroying, just reminding the galaxy that Earth had arrived not to be ruled, not to be controlled, but to be respected. After 30 minutes the battlefield fell quiet, all Council ships disabled, drifting like fallen crowns around the moon, and Valkyrie 1 stood alone, its hull scarred, its systems strained, its soul still burning inside the chamber. The crew sat in silence, some with tears, others with relief. And Kara finally said softly, "It is done." Jace looked at her and replied, "No, this is just the beginning." He sent one final message across the galaxy, encrypted, open to all. "This is Earth speaking for the first time, and we speak as equals from this day forward. We decide our own fate, and if any power dares To chain us again, remember the name Valkyrie 1. The stars listened, the galaxy shifted, and the council fell silent. A new era begins. The fires of war had faded, but their glow remained in memory across the galaxy. Pieces of council ships still drifted above the gas, giant, broken, silent, watching the one ship that had ended their reign. Valkyrie 1 hovered like a shadow in the stars, damaged but undefeated, scarred but proud inside. The ship, the lights were dim, the systems resting for the first time in days. The crew moved slowly between tasks, no alarms, no alerts. Just the hum of recovery drones and the quiet breath of a ship that had given everything. And Juan just sat in the command chamber, disconnected from the neural grid for the first time in hours. His body felt the weight of every second, his muscles ached, his mind throbbed, but his heart was calm. Not because the danger had passed, but because the mission was fulfilled. Kara approached and stood beside him, a datapad in hand. She spoke gently. The council has agreed to the new terms. They signed it without protest. Earth now has a seat at the Alliance, and Valkyrie 1 is recognized as sovereign military property, untouchable by outside control. Just looked at the datapad, then handed it back and said, "Good. Now tell them we will build more." The crew gathered in the main hall that night, their uniforms torn, their eyes tired, but their voices light. For the first time they stood not as shadows of humanity, but as proof of its strength. They had fought the galaxy and returned, not in chains but in command. Alira stepped forward, her voice steady. "You all stood in the heart of the storm and did not break. Earth will never forget what you gave, and neither will the stars." Cheers rose slowly, first from the back, then from the sides. Not wild, not loud, but firm, like the rising of something ancient, something proud, something that had waited far too long to speak. The next day, Valkyrie 1 returned to Earth, entering orbit above the same frozen land that had birthed it. The world watched as the black ship broke the sky again, no longer hidden, no longer a secret, but a symbol of what humans had become. Cities lit with celebration, crowds gathered in streets and rooftops and deserts and forests. Everywhere the signal reached, people looked up and whispered the same name, Valkyrie. Jess and his crew stood on the landing platform, the cold wind rushing over the ice, the same place where it all began. Reporters called out, governments offered medals, families reached for heroes, but Jace kept his silence, not because he had nothing to say, but because the stars still whispered louder. Earth began to change quickly. Borders softened, old rivals shook hands, nations shared technology. For the first time the world united, not through peace talks, but through pride, the kind that came from knowing they had earned their place, not through favors, but through fire. A new academy was built near the launch site, carved into the ice. Students from every part of Earth applied to join its ranks, to study the ship, to learn its systems, to prepare for the next step. Not war, not conquest, but exploration with strength and respect. Jess visited the academy often, not to teach, not to lead, just to watch. And when young cadets asked him what it felt like to command the ship that shook the stars, he answered quietly, it felt like standing alone and choosing not to kneel. Years passed, and new ships were born. Valkyrie 2, Valkyrie 3, each more advanced, each more ready, not to fight, but to remind the galaxy that Earth would never be small again. The council never forgot the battle. Some still feared, others watched, some reached out to form true alliances based on mutual respect. And slowly the galaxy changed. Old empires stepped down, new voices rose, and Earth stood among them, not above, not below, but the Cid. Jace eventually stepped away from command, leaving Valkyrie 1 docked in orbit as a monument and a guardian. The ship no longer moved, but its presence kept the peace, like a silent warning written in steel. He returned to the quiet ice where it had all begun, and walked the halls of the old base, now turned into a museum. Visitors passed by, unaware that the man in the coat once stood at the center of history. He never spoke of it unless someone truly wished to understand. One night he stood outside, looking up at the stars, the same stars that once ignored Earth, now shining brighter than ever. And he whispered to the sky, not as a soldier, not as a commander, but as a human, "We are not finished, not yet." The stars did not answer with Sound they answered with silence, and in that silence was respect. And so ended the story of Earth's first Star Destroyer, not with a scream, but with a legacy, not in fire but in truth. Legacy beyond stars. The wind moved gently across the frozen plains where it all began. The ice still whispered secrets of engines and steel long gone, but never forgotten. Valkyrie 1 rested above an eternal orbit, its hull silent, its weapons cold, its heart still alive through memory and meaning, a monument not of war but of will. Jay stood alone, wrapped in the old pilot coat that still bore faded marks from battle. He had not worn medals. He had not given speeches. He had simply lived, carried by silence and honored by history. His eyes watched the stars, not for enemies, not for danger, but for wonder, the kind that calls only to those who once dared to rise. The world behind him had changed beyond imagination. Cities floated in skies. Oceans lit with green power, deserts bloomed from energy that once burned stars. And yet even in all this, the people remembered the day. Earth refused to kneel. The day one ship flew alone into the galaxy and came back carrying freedom. Children in every school spoke the name Valkyrie, not as a machine but as a symbol, not just of Earth but of choice, of courage, of unity. For generations to come it would remind them that no empire, no council, no ancient throne had the right to silence a world that dared to build, and to believe the council had reshaped itself. New voices joined old ones, reformed by truth, not threat. They welcomed Earth not with fear now, but with respect. They opened their gates to trade, to knowledge, to the wisdom that comes not from age, but from understanding pain and rising anyway. In hidden corners of space, old enemies turned away from conquest, choosing instead to build their own Valkyries, not to match Earth, but to follow it, to walk beside it, in search of something more than power they sought, meaning. Jace walked through the old halls, once more metal corridors now filled with art and laughter. Cadets in training suits passed him, unaware of the stories his eyes carried. He smiled, not because they knew him, but because they were free to dream without fear. He paused at the central chamber where the neural link chair still stood untouched, surrounded by light and silence. The place where man and machine had become one, not to destroy, but to defend, not to conquer, but to awaken. Reached out one last time, fingers brushing the cold surface, and whispered thank you, not to the ship, not to the stars, but to every moment, every soul, every choice that brought them here. He turned away, walking slowly into the snow, his footprints fading behind him, his legacy rising above him, not in statues or songs, but in the fire that still burned quietly in the heart of humanity. The sky remained open, the stars still endless, and Earth no longer waited for permission. It wrote its name into the dark, not with fear but with light.